So Michael left. It's kind of a weird situation, and I guess I'll just start from the phone call that he did give me a couple of hours ago. So Michael recently got back from his college, and he decided to, of course, contact me, like he did mention, to start the podcast. The only problem was that, of course, he was looking for a job at the same time. So what I guess ended up happening was we had a different level of priority in the podcast itself, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. He took it more as a hobby, and he looked at it more as a hobby, and I looked at it as a little bit more serious opportunity that we had to kind of create content. The funny thing is that we don't even have a week doing this. We only really filmed on that one day, and immediately we started promoting. We started creating the Facebook page, the Instagram page. Well, actually, I started creating the Instagram pages, the Facebook page, YouTube, and I think that's where he kind of saw that I was a little bit more serious about the project itself. Now, when he did call me 2 hours ago, he did break it to me that, he was going to start being more busy. He started seeing that it was going to be a little bit more time consuming handling the podcast itself, and he just decided to say that he didn't really feel like it would have been worth, or not worth, but he wouldn't have, as much as I am committed to the project, he wasn't as much committed to the project as I was, right? And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It did bring the mood down as far as the energy I had for the project initially. The motivation, I guess, was affected, especially because I was excited to actually continue with him. I wanted to get upset. I did. I wanted to get sad. It was an unfortunate circumstance. I felt in a way let down, but at that same token, I have to also respect his aspirations and his necessity of an actual income, which is where in any situation you can't be selfish. And that's one of the things I was telling him, is that, I understand you do have your necessities. I understand you do have needs as far as financial needs in your career and whatnot. And I understand you did start seeing how I was a little bit more motivated and I was a little bit more involved in the project itself. So I didn't let it bother me as much, because I know as a person, Michael does have his own set of priorities and in his own things that he's kind of dealing with on his own. And like I said, I wanted to kind of get upset. I wanted to almost stop altogether, but that's too easy. The whole issue with taking on new projects is the challenge. And a lot of times we don't expect that challenge to come in the specific way, like Michael, leaving part of the project, something so heavy. But I think the troubles that you least expect is what determines whether or not you're taking this, or it's going to determine how much you really want this, whatever you're doing. In this circumstance, it's the podcast. I told him that when he did call me, I was excited because he wanted to start the podcast with me. And when we started doing the podcast, it was a different level of excitement that I've honestly never felt before, because it was the first time I was having a conversation. It was being filmed, it was being recorded, and it was being publicated to everyone to give their thoughts on, as far as my own opinions, his own opinions, and the way we would kind of interact. Not only that, it made me realize how much because I've always wanted to do this. I've always wanted to start a podcast. I've always wanted to be a content creator. I've never taken the first steps. So when we actually did it, it felt good, and I got excited. I got extremely excited about what possibilities we had in the future with the podcast. My mind started racing regarding all the possible scenarios we could have achieved with the podcast. And Michael leaving did put a stop on that mindset. Now, at that moment, I could have decided one of two things, right? Either stop, give in to the lack of motivation, let the fear well, not the fear, but let that form of kind of depression set in where you're getting these challenges that you weren't really expecting and that you weren't prepared for. Let that stop me from doing what is honestly something that I've always been interested in, using it as an excuse, using it as a reason to stop the path that we've already decided to take, or keep going, no matter how difficult adapting to that situation might be, to keep the path that's not the easiest. I guess the reason why I decided to keep going is because as a person, as anyone in whatever venture they decide to go on, we don't have the luxury of deciding what hardships are the ones that are going to challenge us. We don't have that choice as far as which scenarios are what is going to give the opportunity of breaking us settle in. We don't have that option. We get tested, and what we do with those tests, the outcomes we decide, the actions we decide, is what determines what comes next. I am the person who decides what is going to happen afterwards. Me realizing that I took on that challenge. I looked at it as a challenge. I looked at it as an opportunity. I said to myself, it sucks. It's difficult. I thought we had traction. I thought we were developing a good direction. And again, you want to use it as an opportunity, as an excuse. You want to use it as an excuse to stop, but you can't because it's too easy. I knew from the beginning there'd be challenges, and to expect the challenges or to fathom what type of challenges is always the incorrect thing to do. Me and Michael didn't leave off in a negative stance by any means. I am happy he did give me his concerns and he was frank about it. He was honest about the whole situation and how he felt, as opposed to either sending me a text or just ignoring me altogether, or putting a veil over the what his obvious emotions were towards, or his position was towards the podcast, and keep going, and at a later date decide to stop. Then I do appreciate that, and I did tell him I appreciate it. I did appreciate it very much, his decision to tell me, and we were understanding. We didn't take it personally. We did it in a professional way. We spoke on the phone, and he is still my friend. He is. There's no hard feelings regarding any of this. This relationship, like any relationship, has to be viewed as two separate individuals deciding to partake in a single journey together. At any moment which either of them is not willing to proceed, there can't be any regret on either side. There can't be any bad feelings or emotions towards the other person. So that being said, I'm feeling uneasy, but I am feeling hopeful. And like everyone going through situations like this, it can get overwhelming if you let it, which is part of the struggle of maintaining that motivation. You have to keep going, because as much as the world feels like it's pushing against you, as much as you have so many more reasons to not try to chase that goal of yours, as much as it feels like there's an overwhelming amount of reasons to say, you know what, let me just stop right here, you have to keep going, because that's what separates us from people who don't succeed. It's the difference between people who have unfulfilled goals or dreams, the people who let themselves fall into that darkness, into that cycle of attempt and failure. It's not easy, and it never was. It's never going to be. It's one of the biggest challenges we have, overcoming those obstacles, overcoming those bumps in the road, recognizing that there will be bumps in the road and there will be more bumps in the road. And the best course of action to take is to just keep pushing on. Just keep going. Make mistakes, make more mistakes, and learn from them, and keep finding that rhythm that you need to keep going, and surround yourself with nothing but pure motivation, and surrounding yourself with nothing but positive emotions and feelings. And a big thank you to all the support the show's been getting. I love all the feedback that I've been receiving through personal messages and phone calls. It's really great to see people reacting to the content that you put out there. That's maybe one of the biggest reasons why it gets me excited to make more of this content is that feedback, that input from other people. Mostly positive, occasionally negative, and that's fine. Not negative, but hypercritical, which is always welcomed. Criticism is something, if you learn to learn from it, it's something that is invaluable just to hear, even if you don't agree with it, people's different opinions on things you're doing. It's never a wrong thing. So I wanted to give you guys a big thanks for that, showing that ongoing support. We do have a Facebook, Instagram, a YouTube, and we're even available on Spotify. If you would much rather prefer hearing the podcast, and you could find the link on the description if you're watching through YouTube. If you're hearing on Spotify, thank you guys for the support again. And I'm hoping that I'm leaving you guys with a positive note, because I am looking forward to what this podcast has in store for all of us. So I'll see you guys on the next episode. Thank you.